Good afternoon. My name is Suzanne McAllister, and I started an interview series at the end of 2020, originally to get to know some of my fellow vegans a little better, get to know their stories, and to share those stories with other folks. And today I'm really pleased. I'm interviewing an old friend of mine who is not vegan. And to be honest with you, this is actually in some ways more interesting for me. And I think for the people who have been watching these interviews, to hear from somebody who isn't, but who has given some thought to it. So I'm very grateful to you, Nancy, that you wanted to do this. So let me tell you a little bit about Nancy. We've known each other for about 20 years. Most of that time we have lived in different cities. So a lot of our relationship has been on Skype, Zoom, and FaceTime. And, but we have gotten together occasionally, which is always a pleasure. Nancy's a former marketing executive. She was with the Green Building Council, where she promoted modern, efficient, and green construction. She's a lover of and expert on moss, the lichen variety. She has beautiful taste in clothing, furnishings, and art, which you can see behind her. I was actually with her when she bought that painting in Pennsylvania at the Woodmere Art Museum, if I remember.
Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful painting. She collects art, obviously, and recently she challenged herself to become fluent in Italian. And pre-pandemic, she lived and studied part-time in Italy. And I have always been impressed with Nancy's love of life, and she just gets out there and does things. When I first met Nancy, I was struck by her warmth, and there's an expression that some people never meet a stranger, and I would say that is true of Nancy. So a couple of years ago, she moved back to Louisville so that she could be close to her family, her mother and her siblings and their families, and that's where Nancy currently resides. So over the years, Nancy, you have consistently I would say applauded my veganism. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you how unusual that is for a non-vegan. And that may come as a surprise to you, but any of the vegans who are listening to this know what I'm talking about, that we are often met with resistance, disdain, or just people ignore it. But you were always, like I said, I felt that you really appreciated it. And as you, in your words, you would say that you thought I lived my principles and my values. So I've always felt supported by you and appreciate that. So I'm curious, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is really Nancy's conception of veganism, or her feelings about it, or what this has meant to you, not just with me, but in general. But the way you responded to me, which is what I know about, suggests to me that there was something compelling about veganism for you. That's my word. But maybe you can talk a little bit about your response to me and to veganism in general.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that you inspire me. That it's not just a curiosity about veganism, but the way that you live your principled life inspires me. And I've often said on our calls that I want to be vegan, but I'm not committed enough or principled enough to make that leap or that effort or that practice. I was also fortunate enough to spend time with you in Pennsylvania, and we went to see the doctor who wrote the China study
Oh, right.
Do you remember that?
I forgot. T. Colin Campbell. Yes.
So we
At
went to see
Penn.
him at Penn, yes, and
Okay.
I believe his information was compelling, and that is what sticks in the back of my head the most, is that animal products trigger a cancer cell,
Yes.
or vice versa.
Yes.
And so I've also had the benefit of hearing how you practice veganism and why you are a vegan. It's not just about food. It's a very holistic approach to veganism. My desire is much narrower than your approach to it, or your practice of it. And what I mean is, mine is more about food. Yours is more not, or yours is about animal rights and things like that. So mine's more about food. But if I were true to some of my other principles, for instance, when I invest in a portfolio that has no guns and no fossil fuels. I have other sustainable or socially responsive investments, like for clean water and community reinvestment, things like that. And so I'm very principled about the environment in that respect, or in some of those respects. But when I think about food, or I go shopping for food, I don't think about the environment. I don't make that connection.
Okay.
And I
Well,
think part of it.
let me stop you for 1 second, because two things jumped out at me. So I apologize, and we'll pick up with what I just heard. And I forgot that you were with me when I went to see T. Colin Campbell. And yes, his study is compelling. What he said was that he was able to turn cancer cells on and off in mice by increasing the amount of casein, which is the protein in milk, in mice. And
Okay.
And that's, I mean, it's a pretty amazing study. However, what I'm hearing you say is that perhaps food and health is really what struck you when you heard him. Is that
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
And
Yes.
then beyond that, because of your interest in the environment, working for the Green Building Council, becoming very interested in moss and doing that study, and you even got involved in a business venture with moss, and the way you invest, very, very interested in the environment. You know about the connection, and what you're saying is, when I'm going shopping, it's not that you don't know it.
Right.
Something happens. Is
Correct.
that right?
I don't make the connection. For instance, I know, perhaps because of you, that how much refuse cows and animals cause, the food production causes, excuse me. And I know that they are burning down and chopping down rainforests to graze cattle. And I know that the corn industry, for the most part, is corrupted. Um,
Well, it's monoculture. What we're destroying the soil because we have just one product,
Correct.
soy and
Correct.
corn. Yeah.
Right. And the thought of CAFOs is just disgusting, nauseating, whatever the word is. But when I go and buy food, I don't think about that. I don't necessarily think about overfishing. I did quit eating chicken for 10 years because I went to see Food Inc. with you again. See, you have been a great influence on me, Suzanne. Thank you. And that turned my stomach, but I'm still don't always make those connections. So
well, let me push a little bit here. When you say I don't make those connections, the fact that you're telling me you don't make the connection means you do make the connection. So there's something else at play.
Okay, perhaps.
You understand
when I'm buying,
saying?
yes.
Because most people wouldn't even be able to say the things you've just said. So you talk about this, you understand the what happens in CAFOs and the impact on the environment and the horrors of the industrial factory farms. But what you're saying is when push comes to shove, either when I'm in a restaurant or I'm going to the grocery store, it's almost like I turn a blind eye. Is that?
Yes and no, but it's almost like it doesn't even come to mind.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
And I think maybe part of the reason is tell myself, or I shop at Whole Foods where, the eggs, the chickens are this and, they're raised outside, or the beef is grass fed and blah, blah, blah. And so I think that maybe there's this higher level of existence for these animals, or that the process of butchering them or whatever is better when it's probably not. And I think you've told me that it's probably not. And
they end up dying.
So, yes,
That's
right.
Yeah.
And it's probably not the most sanitary way to, process food. So, or they're not the most sanitary.
Well, let's put it this way. Those labels, a lot of people would say are meaningless. There are some that are probably better than others, but I'm not an expert on that. But I've read enough to know that there are some people who say those labels, organic, or that the chickens get to be outside. In some cases, they say one chicken gets to be outside for 5 minutes, that kind of thing.
Right.
It's not, in many cases, it's really not an accurate description, but that's neither here nor there. This is on your mind. That's what, to me, is interesting.
Right. And so, and I practice buying organic food, no matter what, well, not no matter what, I shouldn't say, but I practice buying organic food. I don't practice being a vegan. I don't practice much. I practice working out. I practice my Italian. Sometimes I practice yoga. And practice being the active verb.
Yeah, that's a good word.
But I don't practice veganism. And so
I
think.
Do you want to be vegan?
Yes, and sometimes I do, and other times I'm like, you know what, I have enough issues with grocery shopping, and I don't cook much. I don't have a kitchen with exhaust, blah, blah, blah. So it's like veganism is one more, I hate to put it this way, complication for me to cook, and I don't need any more complications. So, when it comes down to it, I would need to commit to something like that in order to practice it better.
So
do I want to be one? Do I want to be vegan? Do I want to practice veganism? Sometimes yes, but I'm not compelled enough at this point for some reason.
Well, I'm wondering, as I'm listening to you talk, two things occur to me. One, does it feel like it would take more effort? You say it's one more complication.
Yeah, yes. It would take more effort because I would have to follow a recipe, Suzanne, and that's not one of my fortes.
Not really. If I think maybe what you're getting at, this was my second question. So complication, actually maybe a better way of describing it is you would have to change your habits.
Yes.
It might not be any more complicated, but what you're accustomed to, let me give you an example. I happened to go to a different grocery store last week. I don't remember why, but I did. I didn't know my way around the grocery store. I didn't know where to go for different things because I go to Trader Joe's and Whole Foods. I know them. I know exactly where everything is, unless they change it. But it's usually one item they change. it was not a pleasant experience going to this grocery store and having to find what I was looking for. I like to go in, get what I need, and come out. I don't love grocery stores.
Me neither.
So if I had to do that on a regular basis, that would really be obnoxious.
Right.
So I'm wondering if part of it is it's that shift. I would have to do things differently.
Yes, that is part of it. That is part of it. And
you have a perception that you would have to follow some recipes, you'd have to learn some recipes, and you've already got your go-to recipes, and the thought of having to learn new ones doesn't appeal to you.
right.
Okay, that's
Right.
So I think really where we come, maybe what we come to is it's almost like there's this almost evenly balanced, I want to do it, but I don't want to do it. I want to do it, but I don't want to do it. And which to me seems like it's not a fun place to be for you, where there's a little bit of this push-pull. Whereas for some people, not being vegan is a non-issue. They don't think about it. They don't care about it. If they
Right.
hear about it, they're just like, well, that's for somebody else. But that's not you.
Right.
You're drawn to it, but then there are these impediments. And so for somebody like me, it was just, I have to do this because I could not do it.
Right.
It was so strong. So I
else.
think what you're saying is there isn't that strong motivation to do it.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
The
Hang on
other-
1 second. I'm just gonna put my lights on a little higher.
Okay.
Brighter, I should say. Okay. So, but you
Also-
wanted to, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, one thing I wrote in my notes was that when I go in Whole Foods, I see all kinds of substitutes, cheese substitutes, probably yogurt substitutes, meat substitutes, sausage substitutes, hamburger substitutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried a couple, not many, but that just doesn't interest me.
Mm-hmm.
I already don't want to eat fake food, like what I call fake food, which is lacking in nutrients or whatever, industrialized food. So why would I eat a fake cheese or something?
Yes.
So that's another thing that it's like, why bother? But I will say, I don't eat a ton of animal products. Sometimes I do, and I go off I go with the deep end sometimes, but I typically don't. So I do a little practice, but I'm not there. And I've heard friends who have cut out dairy first, and then this, and then that, and I think, oh, I could cut out everything but Parmesan cheese.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think about it, but I don't commit to it. I'm just kind of passive about it.
What would be the strongest motivation to do it? Like if you were going to do it, why would you do it?
Corruption of the food industry, or the filth of the food industry. If I could picture animals getting slaughtered in a filthy environment every time I went to reach for about an animal product, that would help. And also making the connection between the environment and the piece of meat I'm holding. That, how many gallons of water did it take to produce that? How much gas did it take to transport that from a farm to a whatever? All of the
Right.
embodied energy, I would say. So thinking about those, being very conscientious about those things, as I stand at the meat counter or the fish counter or whatever.
Right. So again, it's such an interesting phenomenon that you know about this, and when you're not at Whole Foods making your choices, it's very clear. And then when you're there, it's almost like, okay, I'm just going to go and do what I normally do and choose the things that I normally choose.
Right. Which is,
And then after a little while and you reflect and then you think, I don't want to keep doing this, but I do keep doing this. And and that's what I mean about there just seems to
well,
be this almost a balance between I want to make a change and yet I don't make the change.
right. Or it's more like, why don't I practice a little harder?
Yeah,
Not necessarily change, but why don't I do, a meatless Monday or a vegan Tuesday, or,
right.
something that where I'm practicing, because I eat pretty healthy food, but it still contains animal product.
So two things come to mind. One is there are a lot of different programs where you could get support in terms of recipes, et cetera, and lots of people who are more than willing to help, to be a buddy. And the other thing, question I have is there anybody that lives near you that you're friends with who is vegan?
Not that comes to mind.
Yeah.
I have a friend, but she just moved away. The woman I live with in Italy is vegan, or pretty much vegan. She might have
Okay.
Parmesan cheese every once in a while for me. But
Yeah. So I think what we, at least as I'm listening to, what we keep coming back to is there's some motivation, but not quite enough to make a change.
right,
Does that seem
right,
right?
not right. So I'll make this may be an analogy. I'm not sure it'll work, but when I talk about my investments, I'm principled with my investments. Don't invest in this, do invest in this, but I'm very passive about my investments. I don't want to pick the actual investments. I just want them to fall under a certain
Yes.
category or something. And with food, or with, I guess, with veganism or whatever, I'm more passive about it. I think I'm principled, but I'm passive about the practice. That's maybe not a good analogy, but
No, I think it actually is. What I started to think when you were saying that is, so if you had somebody who cooked for you, yes, hey,
yes,
I have somebody once a month. I don't like to cook. You and I are the same. I don't like recipes. I don't like going to the grocery store. It's not my thing. So I
right,
treated myself. She's not vegan, but she cooks vegan for me and she makes fabulous stuff. Things I will never make because they're complicated and I'm just not that interested. I'd rather spend my time doing something else. I
right.
love eating it. But I'm thinking, see, I could come up with so many suggestions and solutions if you wanted to do it, but
Mhm,
I don't think that's the issue.
mhm.
I think once you decided I want to do this,
Mhm.
you'll find a way to do it. It's
Right.
really a matter of, am I there yet?
Right.
I see, I think your life is more complicated not being a vegan. And
But that makes sense. That
I
does make
only say that to you. I don't say that to most people because for most people, they are not the slightest bit bothered by not being vegan. You are bothered by it. It's like the proverbial, I'm gonna go on a diet, but then 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening rolls around and I think, boy, that bag of potato chips looks pretty good. I think I'll just have a little bit.
right. Well,
And
and I wouldn't say I'm bothered by it.
okay,
I know we're talking about this conflict or whatever, but I'm not bothered by it. I'm just, I just had the word in my head. Just kind of want to be. I want to be. So it's the opposite of bothered. I don't, I don't sit around and go, oh my God, you're such a loser because you're not a vegan. Or you can't practice. It's like, you should really try it, Nancy. You should, Suzanne has some compelling information. You've seen compelling information. You have compelling principles that should compel you and stuff like that. But so yeah. The other thing is, in Italy, I'm like, the only reason I get food in Italy is to have Parmesan cheese on it. Every food is a vehicle for Parmesan cheese. So it's like my salt or whatever. So when I go back to Italy, I might, and I don't eat hardly any meat, and I don't think I ate much meat in Italy at all. But giving up the cheese would be a little bit difficult in Italy.
Right. And I didn't say anything about it at the time, but that idea of having the fake meat or fake cheese or fake, I agree with you. And many people I know might have used that as a transition if they were having trouble. But then they get to the point where they think, if I'm doing this, I also want to be healthy. And so looking at the ingredients in some of those, you decide, no, that isn't healthy. So I'm not going to eat it. But as a transition, it can be very helpful. But I think there are many vegans who choose not to go that route. And then there are some who are, and then there are some very, very unhealthy vegans who will eat only processed junk, really. So you can be a really unhealthy vegan and still not eat animal products, but that's not where you are. I guess
that is a fear of mine, though.
What?
I would eat fried foods all the time. Because I saw an obese vegan one time, and I was just kind of shocked. This was at that lecture.
Yeah.
And I thought, good Lord, what does she eat? And I know that's a very narrow thought process, but.
Well, and there are unhealthy vegans. I would say by and large, the ones that I know are not, but
right.
I have seen people who are very, very overweight and clearly are not eating healthy, what I would call clean food. But there's no question in my mind that should you, or if you did decide, hey, I really want to experiment with this, whether it's in Italy or in Louisville or wherever you happen to be, there are ways to do it where you could get a lot of support. And like I said, I could make recommendations, but I think it makes more sense for you to get to a point where you say, you know what, I really want to try this, even if it's for 21 days or 2 weeks or 1 week, or let me just see what it's like. And I could either suggest there are programs I know about, or I can be your mentor buddy, so to speak, if you ever got to that place.
Okay, and that you planted that seed that maybe if someone cooked for me, if I had a personal chef or one of those personal chef services, that would help. But also, I've used coaches in the past, and I've spent 6 months in Italy investing in language lessons to learn that and to practice that. So, perhaps I'll come to the point where I'm ready for a coach, and it would be as much a cooking coach as
yes.
Here are the compelling health reasons to not eat, cholesterol and stuff like that. So
I do think, I know of them in Pennsylvania, and given the way the world is right now, where we do everything like this on Zoom,
right.
One of the blessings of this pandemic is I've been exposed to so many things that are not in my backyard, because it was online and hey, we're all home, we're not doing a whole lot. And so I know that there are things like that. However, the good news is it does seem like things are going to start opening up again. And I am sure there are people in Louisville who you could hire. And it's not like you have to have them cook for you every single day. Like I said, I have somebody who cooks for me once a month, and she makes enough where I sample everything in the first couple of days, and then I freeze things. So it's in my
Right.
refrigerator and it's all fresh. Everything she does it from scratch. There's not one bit of processed food. And
Gosh.
I love it. It's a gift I gave to myself. I have said this. I am not a wealthy woman, but I feel like a wealthy woman when she drops off that food for me. I thought, you know, Oprah has a chef and I have a chef. So,
Right, exactly. Yay. That
so
that that is compelling. That is compelling.
it is something to think about, even if you were just doing it as an experiment to say, well, let me see if I can find somebody who would cook for me and tell her or him that's what you want to do. You want to learn how to eat vegan. You don't want anything processed. The simpler, the better. But you could even say, I like pastas, or I like stews, or I like soups, or whatever it is that you like. And that person will, if they're a chef, they probably enjoy experimenting. I've talked to a lot of chefs who catered like my 60th birthday party.
Yes, that was
She had
amazing.
never done vegan before. And she said, I love doing it. It was a challenge. I had to really do some research, and she enjoyed doing it.
It was
So,
delicious. Yes.
yeah. So it's something to think about. So I'm conscious of the time. And I was going to say that maybe what we can do is a follow-up a month or two from now, or I'm going to leave it up to you. If you did make some changes and you just want to check in again and say, this is what I did, this is what it was like, it helped me, or this is what I did, and I am definitely not going to be a vegan.
Right.
However,
Okay. Yep. Okay. Let me
yeah,
let me work on some things.
no
This
time
is
frame, but and it can be when you're still on this side of the Atlantic, or maybe when you're back in Italy. I am sure there are Italian vegans. I'm sure of it.
Yeah,
And
there
I
are.
will say there's something called nutritional yeast, which is what I
Yes.
put on a lot of my salads, or I don't eat a lot of pasta. It's just not something I love.
Mhm.
But on a pasta, it
Yes.
stimulates Parmesan cheese.
Yes. I use it. I actually use it more on salads, but yes, that
And
and
I
hemp
think
seed.
it's delicious. So
Me too.
anyway, I am so grateful to you that you wanted to do this. I think the people who get to watch this are going to be very interested to hear somebody who's very thoughtful and has given thought to what it would mean to be vegan. And so it's been an exploration for you. And I think it will help people I know who are vegan when they're talking to friends, family who are not, and maybe help them to understand how their friends and family think about this.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm grateful to you.
I'm grateful to you, Suzanne. Thank you. And you're
All
welcome.
right.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Bye.